I am, actually, and the guild needs you to understand why Rey Dau makes that sound when it flies. If you're hanging around the Windward Plains during inclemency, you've probably heard something that sounds like this. Despite Rey Dau having a pretty impressive head and neck in terms of musculature, as well as a pretty complex respiratory system as evidenced by this glottis here, as well as its ability to fly with relatively low musculature around its chest, suggesting that it also has some pretty powerful back muscle, it is 100% definitely not making that noise with its mouth. And I can tell you this for two reasons. The first one, I'll admit, is not entirely damning, because if we go with the idea that Rey Dau is actually much more closely related to birds than a lot of the other flying wyverns, it is possible for it to make two sets of sounds at the same time. Birds have what's called a syrinx, which is a vocal organ that is branched like this and sits directly on top of the lung. This allows them to have much more complex vocalizations than you would expect out of a mammal. Rey Dau, however, is not particularly bird-like because it seems not to have a sternal keel. While it does have very bird-like wings due to this fused but free alula and the entire rest of the digits of the wing being baked down into one other post, Rey Dau has true teeth alongside its rhamphotheca, which is this sheath that covers the outside of the mouth. As you can see here, it has this sort of beaky structure on the outside of its skull, which is very common in birds to reduce the amount of weight required and allow them to fly better and still be able to eat well. But Rey Dau also has these great piercing teeth, so it's kind of in an intermediary state. So that makes it pretty unlikely that Rey Dau is using a specialized bird-like syrinx to produce this noise. The other reason I know it's not coming from Rey Dau's mouth is because I know where it is coming from. When you smash two fulgurite crystals together, which are the glassy crystals that form after lightning hits sand in the Windward Plains, they produce a very distinct chiming sound. This is why Kunafa is called the Windsong Village, because when wind blows through Kunafa, these little stones smash together and produce a trilling sound. That trilling sound is the exact same sound that Rey Dau makes when it takes off by beating its wings really hard or swashes its tail around. That's because Rey Dau doesn't just charge its horns, it has electrical organs that go throughout its entire body, as you can see by the one under the tail here. When Rey Dau flies through the sand and touches the tips of its wings and tail to the sand, because the electric charge is so strong, it melts the sand, turns it into fulgurite, and attaches it to the wings and tail. This is what Rey Dau looks like when it's naked. Note this prominent yellow color, which is the color of its skin. Particularly, it's the color of these osteoderms that go down the tail and along the back. Now, if you look at this screenshot, you'll see that the ends of the wings, the alula, are almost completely blue because they're covered in glassy fulgurite. The same is true of the tail, but I can't show you any of my screenshots of the tail because my computer is not working right now. Point being, when it waves that tail around or flaps its wings really hard, you get that same jingling noise, because these little globs of fulgurite that are hanging onto the ends of the osteoderms are slapping together. This is further evidenced by the fact that the people of Kunafa hang those wind chimes all around their village to ward off monsters. This is an example of what's called Batesian mimicry, where one harmless species, in this case humans, mimics a trait of a harmful species in order to ward off predators. In this case, humans, the harmless species, are mimicking Rey Dau, the harmful species, to ward off predators that normally wouldn't attack Rey Dau, but would attack a human. When Doshaguma or Chotacabra or Balahara or any of the Windward Plains native monsters hear that jingling noise, unless they're incredibly pressed for a meal, they're going to turn the other way. Because, despite what you might see in movies, predators are pretty risk-averse. And for something like Rey Dau, an injury sustained in a hunt would be really, really awful for its quality of life. Failing a hunt is fine. You can survive not eating for a few days. What you can't survive is committing to a hunt too hard, injuring yourself, and then not being able to eat for the rest of your life because you starve while you're trying to repair your body. Particularly, this defense would be very effective against Balahara because it's a predator that primarily hunts by sound. Anyway, that's why Rey Dau. Now, there are actually analogs for Rey Dau's tail in nature. These are the feathers of an animal called the club-winged manakin. This is a behavior called sonation, in which animals, most often birds, produce noises with their body through parts other than the respiratory system, or the syrinx. This is another example of Rey Dau borrowing a very, very bird-like trait, which I think is super cool because I study birds. These hummingbirds, for example, produce sound by shaking their tail feathers. The club-winged manakin beat their wing feathers together, and they make a kind of drumming sound like a firecracker pop. However, they can also hit them together really, really fast to produce a tone, like this. Here we go again. One more time. Now, that certainly sounds like it's coming from the bird's mouth, but it's not. It's beating its wings together. Now, what I really love that the monster in our team has done is they've combined that kind of simplistic idea of bird sonation and then hybridized it in their mind with another animal behavior, which is the formation of glass shells. These guys are called diatoms. They're not plants or animals, but they're unicellular organisms that form shells out of glass. Now, they don't do anything super cool by creating lightning strikes to melt sand into glass and then cover their bodies with it, but they do form shells out of silica. And when you wrap all of these ideas together of, bird-like anatomy and then the bird-like behavior of sonation and then the formation of a glass shell across the scales, it just makes for a super, super cool and well-designed monster. And, this is not unique to Rey Dau. Pretty much every monster has these amazing little details in it that make me, as someone who studies animals and other organisms, just so excited. Please let me know which other creatures or plants in the Monster Hunter universe you'd like me to break down next. They're all so, so amazing and so in-depth, and they're really wonderful designs.